Hey everybody, this is Tracy here for another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to recap Love Is Season 1, Episode 1, which was titled Nuri and Yasir. So if you haven't heard about this show, it's the new romance. It's a new series on OWN that deals with the real life story of producers and show writers Mara Brock Akil and her husband Salim Akil. And you may know them from the show Black Lightning, Being Mary Jane, The Game, Girlfriends, and I believe that Mara got her start writing for Martin, the TV show Martin. And so they are like the dynamic duo, power couple in Hollywood. And so they decided that, according to an interview that Mara did on the Wendy Williams show this week, they decided to do the show because so many people, ask about their story. Like, when are you guys going to tell your story? And, how did you and Salim come together and all of this stuff. So they decided to make their life story into a TV show with some liberties, okay? So I was excited for this show from the moment, I first saw the trailer for it. And, I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to recap that show when it comes out. But after the first episode, something irked the hell out of me about this show, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. So after continuing to watch the show and rewatch some of the episodes, I finally figured out what it was that was getting on my nerves. So the show goes back to when they first met in 1996, 97-ish. But it opens up with this older couple that is supposed to be Nuri and Yasir in their current day, and somebody is doing a documentary on them. So they're basically guiding the story as narrators. And so it was kind of bothering me because I was like, okay, everybody knows that this is the story of Mara and Salim. So number one, why didn't they just call the characters Mara and Salim? But since y'all want to make it to be like a fictional show, even though you're promoting it as your love story, then why not have Mara and Salim be the older couple that's guiding us through the story, that's actually getting this documentary done on them, but they chose to use this other couple. So it was like, okay, whatever. Then the other thing that was bothering me was that I realized that I don't like the actors, the main actors in the show that's playing Nuri and Yasir. And so by the third episode, I realized that Michelle Weaver, who's the female actor, she plays Nuri, who's the person that plays Nuri, and she is just channeling too much of Paula Patton for me. And y'all know Paula Patton is, she just has that thing about her in the movies that she does where, she's just Miss Goody Two-Shoes, so perfect. Every man adores me, because I walk into the room and I'm just simply irresistible and every man has to have me. But I'm an airhead, but men think it's cute because they want to save me and protect me, and that she giving me all of that. And I cannot stand Paula Patton. And I think she had a movie that came out recently, and we were on Facebook, and people was like, oh, are you going to see that movie? And they was like, oh, I was excited about the movie, but when I found that Paula Patton was in it, I was like, nope, that'll be a pass for me. And I can't remember what that movie was, and because I meant to go back and see how it did, but the fact that I didn't hear nothing else about it, or maybe the movie hasn't come out yet. But anyway, I know I wasn't alone in feeling that way about her. It was other people that were saying it. So then we go over to William Catlett, who is playing Yasir. And he's doing a good job in the role of Yasir, don't get me wrong on that. But he is kind of creepy. It was just something creepy about him. And then he put his creepiness on full display when him and Michelle Weaver joined Mara on the Wendy Williams show this week. And so Mara was doing most of the talking, but then Wendy would ask William and Michelle specific questions. And whenever she would ask William a question, he was like sitting there just looking at William, like, and he was just sitting there looking at Wendy like, I couldn't understand it. He was just staring at her, and it was so awkward because he wouldn't say anything. He was just sitting there like he was posing. Like Mara had told him, just sit there and pose and don't say nothing, don't answer her questions. And then the camera people were getting confused, and then they would like move the camera from him to Wendy back to him, waiting on him to say something. And Wendy was like, what the hell is going on? So then Mara a couple of times jumped in and answered the question, and then Wendy was sitting there like, I'm talking to you, can you answer the question? Like, he was just so weird. And I went to Twitter to see if I was the only one that felt this way, and there was a lot of comments on Twitter where people was like, that was the weirdest interview I have ever seen. Okay, so with all of that resolved, I decided to binge watch all the 4 episodes that have come out so far and put my idiocracies to the side and give the show a fair shot. So let's go ahead and get started. So the show's central relationship is between TV writer Nuri and the guy Yasir, who is a broke aspiring writer slash director. And so when it starts out, it's the older Yasir, and so then Yasir, is basically giving us an introduction to the show because it's now 30 years later, and they're doing this video for their 30th anniversary. And so he says that meeting Nuri was like a meteor that hit my life and made me take off this mask I've been wearing so that you could see the real light in me, and so I could see the real light in me also. So the opening of the actual show with the younger versions of it, because there's a lot of going back and forth. The opening takes us to 1996, and Yasir and his friend Sean are hanging out at this cafe that was like, it was like a coffee shop, but it was set up like a bunch of like living room furniture and tables and chairs, like a hodgepodge. And I can't think of what they used to call those back in the day. But anyway, Sean has brought Yasir there because he wants him to check out this chick that he'd been stalking for the past few weeks. And he's like, she comes every week on Tuesdays and she sits over there. So when Nuri walks in, Sean gets up and walks away. So I don't know if he was going to the bathroom or the coffee or what he was doing. So then Yasir is all confident and everything. So he goes over and introduces himself and gets her name. And they find out that they're both aspiring writers and want to get into production, and that they're there in Hollywood, seeking their dream. So then Sean comes back, and Yasir walks back over and sits down with Sean and basically says, oh, her name is Nuri, she's a writer, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't let on to Sean that he kind of like was digging Nuri. So then a whole year passes by, and we have a scene with Nuri. I think I keep saying Yuri, but it's not Yuri, it's Nuri, N-U-R-I. So we have a scene, it's a year later, and Nuri is laying in bed with this guy, and her mother comes in, and the mother comes in with this white lady. And so we find out that life has changed for Nuri. She's become a writer on this television show called Martin, which we know is Martin. And she's bought her first home, and she's just like really feeling herself right now. And so the mom is like coming in like, who is this guy? Why is he in the bed with you? And Nuri was like, well, who is this woman with you? And so she goes, this is your neighbor, and she was kind enough to come over here, and I want to introduce you. And so the guy jumps up out the bed, and he's trying to get dressed and everything. And then the mom was like, well, who is he? And then Nuri was like, oh, we work together. And so she was like, well, what's going on with you two? So they have this real awkward moment where we find out that the guy is actually, I think they used to call them gophers back in the day, but they're basically the production assistants on the set of TV shows and movies, and they're responsible for getting the coffee and the donuts and just running errands and everything. And so Nuri doesn't really like the guy, but he was a cuddle buddy. He kept her warm at night, and they just hunch each other. They weren't really having sex. And then the mom asked him what sign he was, and I keep thinking that he said he was an Aquarius, because I remember cringing because my daughter's dad is an Aquarius. And so she was like, didn't I tell you not to get involved with Aquarius men because they're sensitive, and he's gonna fall in love with you? And then the guy said something, and the mother was like, see, he's already in love with you. You never listen to me. So it was just a really stupid scene. And so the mother finally gets the guy out of the house and get the neighbor out of the house, and she's talking to Nuri and telling Nuri, she needs to be more intentional about life, and she needs to go out and buy some furniture for her house. And so we also find out that Nuri has 3 men in her life at this particular time. So one of the guys she has a boyfriend back in New York, and his name is Derek, and I think she met him in college. And so she refers to him as her whirlwind weekend until he's my hubby guy. And then the second guy is a guy named Keith, and Keith is a TV executive. And so she calls him her church first communion brunch guy. So I guess she spends her Sundays with him. And then the third guy is Will, the set assistant that we met. So we know right off the bat, that Nuri has her heart set on marriage and is willing to give any man she meets a try, and in the hopes that he's the one that she's looking for. And so she tells us that because of her station in life, and she wants us to know that she requires a brother to match her efforts as a prerequisite for marriage. Then we move over to Yasir. So Yasir is 33 years old, and he's making so that makes him about 5 or 6 years older than Nuri. And so Yasir is jobless. He's unemployed. He's shaking up with his on again, off again girlfriend named Ruby, who is a yoga instructor. And the two of them came to the area I think after Yasir had gotten a divorce. And so they were both chasing dreams and falling short. So things are rocky because Yasir is still working on the script but not bringing in any money. And so we don't see Yasir going out to a job. We don't see him pitching his script to anybody. He's just laying there, laying up on Ruby. So Ruby is growing increasingly frustrated and begins playing like these emotional games in hopes of sparking a fire under Yasir to either crap or get off the pot. So Yasir comes in and he surprises Ruby with tickets to a Wynton Marsalis and Cassandra Wilson concert that he won or somebody had gifted to him. So because they are having financial difficulties, Ruby wants him to sell the tickets for Yasir's half of the rent. And so people on Twitter, they were thinking, Ruby's nasty, she's wrong for that. That was a romantic gesture, and she should have just gone to the concert and enjoyed herself and, not been pressing him for the money. I was thinking these are people who obviously don't know what it's like, to be tired of carrying a grown man and telling him, that his gestures are cute, but you stressing me out because I don't know how to pay the light bill. They sitting there with this goo goo gaga crap going on, and Ruby trying to get the bills paid. So things are starting to look up for Yasir when he runs into Nuri at a furniture shop and invites her to the concert instead. Instead of selling them tickets like Ruby told him. Oh, and he does this while wearing I think he had a sweater on, and I thought it was just some really short shorts. And the show is set in the 90s, so I was thinking about what kind of shorts were men wearing back in the 90s, because it just looked so awkward. And actually when he ran into Nuri, he was with Sean. So Sean's in a relationship and has a baby, and so he was out with the baby, and he had stopped by and gotten Yasir, and so he was walking down the street when they spotted Nuri. And also when the show first came on, Nuri has really long hair, but after she got the job, I guess on the Marvin show, she cut all her hair off, so now she's wearing a really short haircut. And so they were trying to figure out if it was really her. And then when she went into the store, Yasir followed her in there. And so when he walks out of the store, Nuri turns to the clerk at the store and was like, okay, what was he wearing? And the lady said, I'm pretty sure those were Calvin Klein's. And so she was like, that's what I thought. So I guess they thought he was like bringing in a new fashion statement. So then Nuri has a friend on the show, that another writer on the show named Angela. And so Angela is basically telling her that, yeah, Yasir might be romantic and everything, but you need to throw him back in the dating pool. So then Nuri reluctantly agrees. And so she decides to call Yasir to tell him that she can't go to the concert with him and she wants to give him back the ticket. So she calls the number that he gave her, and I was like, this joker was really bold because he gave her Ruby's phone number, the number to their house. Because remember, this is the 90s, so everybody ain't got cell phones. They had pagers back then. So Ruby answers the phone, and then Nuri's just like, oh, may I speak to Yasir? Like, she wasn't hesitating or nothing that a woman just answered this phone. I'm just like, okay, this is some kind of crazy. And then to make it even more crazier, Ruby hands Yasir the telephone. And I'm thinking, now in 1997, I was 33 years old. And I'm trying to picture being in the house. Like, I never lived with a man back then, but I'm sitting there thinking, if I was at my boyfriend's house and his phone rung and I answered the phone and it was a woman asking for him, I'd probably been like, okay, who's calling and why are you calling? But Ruby just gave him the phone, and then he takes the phone, has a conversation with Nuri, and they decide to meet up at this cafe. And then he just leaves the house. And so I guess this is how him and Ruby's relationship work, where they're doing good one minute and then she's sick of him the next minute and then they back good again. So maybe they were in one of their moments where they were off and they were mad at each other. So she didn't care and was hoping some woman would come and take him away. So at the cafe, the two go back and forth about the tickets, and Nuri, was saying, I have daddy issues. So anytime a guy, tries to do something nice for me, I have this desperate reflex to just say yes, but now that I've thought about it, I can't really take this ticket, and why don't you give the ticket to your roommate, take your roommate to the concert. And so I'm thinking, like, this would have been the perfect time for Yasir to tell her all about Ruby and about their situation, but of course he's a man and he doesn't do that. So then the two start talking about themselves and sharing things, and they actually ended up at the little cafe until like 4 o'clock in the morning, and the guy who was trying to lock up was like, y'all gonna have to get up out of here, I need to go home. But, they learned that they're both Muslim, and I think Nuri was born into a Muslim family, whereas Yasir was converting to being a Muslim, or converting to Islam. And so we found out that both of them have a parent that is in prison, and so they are, like I said, they're so engaged in the conversation that hours have passed. So then Yasir wonders how different their life would have been if they had started dating after they first met a year ago. Like, what would they be saying now, 1 year into their relationship? And then Nuri, for some reason, says, I would say that I love you. like, you know this man. And then Yasir responds, I love you too. And I'm thinking, like, no, he said, I love you too, so let's cut the bull crap and get on with living this life together. And I'm thinking, y'all have probably spent a total of 6 hours together in the past 12 months. And 5 hours and 45 minutes of that time has been on this little date y'all on right now. But honey, they say they're in love with each other, so we gonna roll with it. So as they're leaving out out of the cafe, they have this real nice kiss. And so Nuri and Yasir, they part ways and return home, and they both have that, that feeling you have when you meet this guy or this woman that you really, really like, and you already planning the wedding and the kids and where y'all gonna spend the rest of your life living in. So they are like in that romantic phase right there. And so that was until Yasir got home. Now you figure it's got to be like 5 o'clock in the morning when he gets home, and Ruby was waiting. I guess Ruby was getting up, getting ready to go to her job at the yoga studio. So Ruby, she tried to push up on him and everything, and asked him, "Do he want to go sleep in the bed?" And he like, "No, I'm fine. I'll sleep on the couch." And she was like, "Well, I was only asking because I was getting ready to go to work." And I'm thinking like Ruby had to be feeling some kind of way about, first of all, this woman calling your house, and then he gets up and leave, and he gone all night long. Like, girl, you should have had his stuff packed and sitting out on the porch waiting for him, but instead you trying to play this cat and mouse game with him, and then he just brushing you off like you a flea. Okay, so he was like, "No, I'll go and sleep on the sofa." I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be a trip. So then he so he gets on the sofa and he puts some headphones on like he about to tune her out. But then Ruby gets kind of salty and tells him that she hopes that Nuri doesn't mind that he has a kid, no job, and now he has no place to stay. And so Yuri, you still don't even pay her any attention. So I'm thinking that this is something that they go through all the time. But we know it's all going to work out in the end with Nuri and Yasir, not just because the real life romance did, but also because the older Yasir, we go back to a scene with them, and he's looking in the camera, talking again and saying that, what's for you is for you. And God knew that if Sean got her number that day, when they first met, he wouldn't be here right now. And so whether I knew it or not, or whether she knew it or not, she was already mine. Nuri saved my life. He finishes wiping away a little fake tear. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a trip. So you guys, if you watch Queen Sugar and love the soundtrack that goes with each episode for that show, then you really, really, really are going to love the soundtrack for Love Is. Because, the 90s was like the best decade for music. And so I actually think that they are seducing us with the music so that we don't focus too much on how utterly ridiculous this story is, or pay attention to the liberties that Mara has taken as she's writing her as Salim's actual story. Because we all know that if this stuff was happening in real life, it would not be going down like this. So the show fades out with Bootsy Collins' I'd Rather Be With You playing, and I was like, all right now. So guys, if you're watching Love Is, tell me what you think about it so far. Leave your comments below, rate the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye bye.